right, I want to welcome everyone to the March 2024 Regional Housing Forum. I appreciate everybody getting here almost on time. We're going to go ahead and start because we have a full agenda today. As we begin, I'm really mindful of how much we are kind of tribal, the lack of trust in institutions, the lack of trust in each other. I'm mindful of the need to work together, particularly around this issue of affordable housing. One of the things that we do in the Episcopal Church, and I want to thank St. Luke's again for hosting us, is we have a time in the service where we pass the peace. And when we started the Housing Forum many years ago, it was small enough that we could go around the room and get everybody introduced. And that was an important way to start a meeting. I can't do that now, and there's probably 200 people online watching, not here in the room. But I do think as we look at the issues of NIMBY and kind of being afraid of who our neighbors are, and the issue of the conflicts that we have in the world and in the community, that the more we know each other, the more we learn to trust each other, the more we're going to get done. So I want you to take just a moment to introduce yourself to your neighbor. Tell them who you are if you don't know them, what you do. We're just going to take a minute, but let's pass the peace before we start the meeting. All right, folks, let's come back together. All right, we're going to begin again. All right, if everybody can have their seat, we'll begin. We've got a big agenda today. I can tell you there are very few Episcopalians in the room. We don't take that long to pass the peace, but I always think the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting is equally important to the meeting itself. So I'm glad that we can get to know each other and network here. We have a big agenda today, and there's not going to be enough time because we've got so many good people to talk to. You know, one of the things that we do, and you'll notice through the years, is that we frame the challenges of creating affordable housing as a regional issue, because we're not going to solve it just in DeKalb or Cobb or Gwinnett or Henry counties or here in Atlanta. But I did think it was important to focus on what's happening in the city of Atlanta today. And as we learn about the many developments and positive things that are going to happen, we're going to meet Terry Lee, our new CEO of Atlanta Housing. We're going to talk to partners in the city that have created, I think, a unique and very exciting new place for those most in need, the Melody, kind of how that was created in a short amount of time and what we're looking at in the future. We're going to get an update from Elizabeth, as we do, of what's happening at the Capitol. Just thank you up front, because a lot of people have gotten involved this year, because ultimately it is a public policy issue. And you'll hear from Elizabeth about the progress we're making. And then we'll end with Courtney, who is the assistant and really the leader in the city on affordable housing, and talk about the future. So again, thank you. We're going to begin with a conversation. Terry, are you in the room? All right, well, come right over here, Terry, and why don't you sit right here?
I was beginning. Can you all? I was beginning to feel like I was in the wrong room.
Oh, no.
I'm used to housing folks being a little bit more welcoming. How's everybody doing this morning? Awesome.
All right. I don't think Terry needs a lot of introduction. She's been with us before. She's had a number of leadership roles in the city, both in the planning department, as the director of housing for the city, as the associate or what's your role has been at the Deputy Commissioner of Atlanta Housing, and now we're very excited that Terry has taken on the role as CEO. So when Terry and I talked about opportunity for her to speak to you and to speak to the larger community, I said, Terry, I'll give you 30 minutes, you can just make a speech. And she said, well, I could do that, but why don't we talk? Why don't we have kind of a fireside chat? So I told her if I ask her the first question and she gives a 30-minute answer, that'll be fine. But there's a number of things I think we can cover today. So Terry, welcome. We are very excited. I'm personally very excited for your leadership. And maybe the way to start this conversation is, why is this particular time special? What's special about the time we're living in, the time that you're coming into this leadership position?
No, absolutely. Bill, first of all, first and foremost, thank you for welcoming me back home. I've had the privilege to sit here with you in different facets and different opportunities since I've been in the city of Atlanta. And I'll tell you, I always remain grateful to be able to come to the Regional Housing Forum and to just share. And so when I think about the time we're in now, I literally have been in this city 20 years. I came here for the opportunity to work as the Director of Housing under then Mayor Shirley Franklin. And as I think about housing and think about the different opportunities we've had and the different initiatives, the one thing that really strikes me is that this is a time where political will and political resources have literally collided and exploded in such a way that the urgency of now, the fact that we have to address affordability, address it differently, address it from a very innovative fashion, address it from a partnership and a collaborative standpoint, is at the forefront of everybody's mind. I remember in 2004, well really 2008, 2009, right when we were beginning to start the foreclosure crisis, we had nonprofit organizations that were really struggling. And while they were talking about housing affordability, not many others were. Today, I'm seeing the fact that every actor that touches a level of affordability is coming to the table. Nonprofit organizations, you have public sector working in a way that we've never worked before. You have the philanthropic community coming forth. You have the for-profit community stating that this is important because it really touches the economic viability of our city. And so I think housing affordability, affordable housing, the need for affordable housing, and quite honestly, the need to touch people and to touch people different. We do a lot of counting units. And we do a lot of talking about what our goal is. But at the end of the day, when you think of the goal that the mayor's expressed, 20,000 units, when you think of the goal that Atlanta Housing has committed to, 10,000 units, what it really comes down to is that we've made a commitment to touch 20,000 or 10,000 lives. We've made a commitment to utilize housing as the vehicle to lift a person up to a different level of economic freedom. And at Atlanta Housing, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to serve at the helm because there's never been more of an exciting time to use a public housing authority to impact affordability different. As a I think this is what you meant about a speech, huh?
Yeah. I'm going to butt in a minute and ask another question. Well, go ahead, Terry.
But as the Public Housing Authority, we are uniquely positioned. We are directly commissioned by HUD to provide rental assistance to families that quite honestly are making a very barely minimum living. But in addition to that, we have at our fingertips ready land. And as you all know, God isn't making any more land. And so at the Housing Authority, we have the ability to reposition former public housing vacant sites to not just provide affordability, but really serve as a catalyst to lift neighborhood transformation, neighborhood viability differently. And so I believe this is an exciting time to be in Atlanta. I believe this is an exciting time to serve as a public servant. And it definitely is an exciting time to be the Chief Executive Officer for the Housing Authority.
So let's put a little sharper point on it. I know one of the things that we've talked about through the years in all your different leadership positions is how housing, the same way I thought of food, as a community building tool. And the way I started the forum today, with us kind of having that moment of sharing the peace with each other, is that we need to come together as a community. Maybe to set expectations, what are the tools that the Housing Authority has to put this agenda forward?
No, absolutely. Thank you, Bill. So the Housing Authority really is a creature of the state. So by state law, we're created under guidance from state law. And those powers under state law are really vast. We have the ability to not just build housing, but to develop housing. We have the ability to issue bonds. We have the ability to issue loans. We have the ability to serve as a private developer through an affiliate, if we choose to create an affiliate arm, such as the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation that has been created. And then from a federal standpoint, again, we have at our fingertips rental assistance. And many of you in this room know one of the most precious resources if you're developing rental housing is a housing choice voucher. Be it from a tenant-based standpoint or a project-based standpoint. But Atlanta is fortunate, and this was done under previous leadership, under the leadership of Renee Glover. We were able to receive a designation called Moving to Work. And the Moving to Work designation, at the original time, only about 30 housing authorities had that designation. But it gave us the ability to take those precious federal resources we have and make them fungible. So instead of just providing rental assistance, we can utilize our dollars to provide money for development activity, as well as support the essential services and needs of our residents. That's a little different from a traditional housing authority. A traditional housing authority has to utilize their resources directly for rental assistance. And so we are very fortunate to have that designation. Now there are over 100 Moving to Work organizations across the country, but Atlanta has served to be the most innovative and creative in utilizing
So what's
its
that
designation.
allow you to do that maybe other housing authorities can't do?
One good thing that allows us to do, if you think about the Housing Choice Voucher Program, one of the concerns I heard when I first went to the Housing Authority is that it took us too long to do inspections. And so if we have a backlog of inspections for a tenant to actually move into a unit, then that means that we're really holding up the process. And so now, because of our MTW certification, we've been able to do a self-certification process where a tenant, such much as if you were renting a unit on the private market, the tenant can do the walkthrough with the landlord or the property owner, do a self-certification that the unit is up to standard and able to be lived in, and we will accept that self-certification and then come out and do a separate inspection 35 to 45 days later. The reason why that's important is that we're not allowing any level of bureaucratic red tape or, quite honestly, delay in getting people to be housed.
Maybe you should say that again, Terry.
Oh, bureaucratic delay or red tape. Let's just be real about it. You know, when most people think about government and government intervention, they automatically equate that to a level of slowness. And one of the things that I've talked to my team about is the urgency of now. And, you know, we are in Atlanta. This is the home of Dr. Martin Luther King. And in one of his last speeches, he spoke about the fact that we had to intentionally mobilize differently in order to impact the larger environment. And that's one of the messages that I teach, that I preach. We are in the urgency of now. We have to find a way to make it easier to do business with the Housing Authority. We have to find a way for the Housing Authority to be at the table, especially at the table where decisions are being made about the larger infrastructure here in this city. And we have to, quite honestly, make it fun. I want Bill to call us and say, hey, I have this creative idea. And instead of us saying, no, we don't think it meets the regulations, we need to sit down and say, okay, let's talk about it. And then let's figure out a way to get it done. And that's really the mantra of our mayor.
Say something about the strategic plan. I know you guys have done a plan. Aspirations are great. Alignment is great. But you work off a plan. What can we expect out of that plan?
Yeah, so it was so important to me in my former role as Chief Operating Officer for Atlanta Housing to create a blueprint and to create a transparent blueprint as to where we are going over the next 5 years. And so in January of 2023, our board adopted our strategic plan. The difference between this strategic plan and the previous plan that the Housing Authority had, the previous plan was a baseline. What we basically said in our strategic plan is we're going to make a goal and a commitment and a promise to Atlanta as to how we're not just going to utilize our resources but use our talent. One of the biggest obstacles or perceptions, quite honestly, that I had before going to the Housing Authority is that we had all this land and nothing was being done about it. And so I wanted to face that head on. I wanted to literally put out there within our document how many acres of land do we have, what's the current status of each and every acre, and then what would be the development trajectory of doing so. So the importance of our strategic plan, quite honestly, is the fact that we are showing that we are open for business, that we are going to be transparent, and we will allow our public and our stakeholders to hold us accountable to the commitment that we've made. And if you have not read our strategic plan, how many have read our strategic plan? Okay, I'm getting better.
Maybe I'll ask that question next meeting. How
Right.
about that?
So I urge you to do so. I urge you to do so because it is literally one of the most transparent plans I think we've put forth as an agency. And in addition to just the hard document that you have, we also have a virtual dashboard that's on our website. You can go to our website and literally track our progress, not just on the strategic plan items, but as to how we're coming along with production, where we're making home buyer assistance available, and the areas and parts of the city that we're providing some level of rental assistance to.
You know, you make a important point, I think, Terry, is the importance of transparency, of measuring what we do, of being accountable to the community. So say again, if any of us want to track project, go to your website?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to our website. Our website actually have a banner on the homepage that talks about the strategic plan and the strategic plan dashboard. If you hit that, click that banner, it'll take you directly to our dashboard, and we update the information quarterly. So you can go on right now today, and you'll see the results of the strategic plan as well as any level of production or rental assistance activity as of January 31st. And let me tell you why that's important. I actually learned that lesson when I served as the former chief housing officer. We talk a lot about numbers. We talk a lot about investment. But unless you can actually show where funds are being invested, the activity that's taking place, it's really talk. Because we're in a time now in this city where people want you to show. People want to see the action. They want to be able to touch that something is really taking place. People are tired of rhetoric, and they should be.
Speak some about how you're going to work with developers, large and small. Small developers have a tough time because they may not have the capital to do all the work on getting the land ready. But I know part of the charge, and we had your previous CEO here, Gene Jones, a couple of meetings ago, was it's kind of a new day. We're going to work outside of just our little circle. How's that going to happen? Who are you going to work with?
No, absolutely. So I was here, I think maybe 2 or 3 months before Gene. Gene came to visit, and I talked a little bit about the land, because again, that's one of the things that I believe has been our Achilles heel, but also it's the best opportunity we have to show up differently in this environment. And so when I spoke about the land, I talked about the acreage we have. We have about 356 acres of land. Of those acreage, we've actually divided them into 3 different tiers. Tier 1 would be properties that currently are under some level of development or have a master development assigned. Tier 2 would be properties that we currently have out on the street with a request for proposal. And then Tier 3 are properties that may not necessarily be suitable for housing or be able to be developed within the plan period, and we're open for more innovative and creative ideas. So when you think about Tier 1, that's about 177 acres. So that's looking at your Civic Center, your Bowen Homes, your Herndon Homes, Inglewood, Ashlet, Scholars Landing. When I think about that tier, literally we're going to have a total of 5 closings by the end of this calendar year. We're going to close on the first phase of Civic Center with the Civic Center partners. We're going to close on the first phase of Bowen Homes. We're actually doing a groundbreaking next week on the second phase of Herndon Homes, and we will be closing on the first and second phases of Inglewood. That's real activity. Now, those developers that were pre-selected are developers that have partners at the table with them. And one of the things that we encourage our development partners to do, and we encourage this through our RFPs and quite honestly through a point advantage, we encourage our developers to work with smaller developers as well as minority and women business-owned enterprises, because we know that that's important. And quite honestly, that's the cradle of how our city has grown.
And that takes extra effort.
Absolutely,
Right?
absolutely. But one of the things that we say is if we're open to business, we're also going to be fair about how we do business. And we want to make sure that our development entities are actually bringing along smaller developers. The last procurement offering that we had, which was for a request for qualifications, we did something a little different. We, and this is will be for the parcels in Tier 2, which is about 74 acres. For those parcels, we basically had different categories where the larger developers, of course, would be able to submit their qualifications, but we also had a pool that would be available for smaller developers who would not have the financial capital to develop on their own, but at least we could certify them so that they could automatically be matched to a larger development entity. And so that was something that was totally different and it was totally new, but we recognized kind of lessons learned when we looked at some of the previous transactions, that if we want to encourage participation for smaller developer, minority, and women business-owned enterprises, we're going to have to make sure we have the incentive for development partners to do so.
I know we have a planning committee to figure out our agenda and questions. One of the questions they came up with was your commitment to sustainability and green infrastructure. Where does that fit?
So within our strategic plan, it's actually riddled throughout. And then from an evidence standpoint, literally, we complete the self-development of Roosevelt Hall. And if many of you don't know, Roosevelt Hall was the last remaining building for the former university home site. That was the first public housing available in this country and in this state for Black people. And so when we redeveloped Roosevelt Hall, we redeveloped Roosevelt Hall with the intention of making it sustainable. So you have an 18,000 square foot building that is gold LEED. And we have permeable pavers, we have bioswales. We literally led the redevelopment of that with sustainability in mind. Now, from a residential development standpoint, we're doing the same thing. Many of our projects are funded through 4% credits or 9% credits through DCA, and they have a requirement for sustainability. But we also have strongly encouraged our development partners to use sustainable measures, because we recognize it's one thing for it to be affordable on the front end, it's another thing for it to be affordable on the back end, and for those savings to be passed through to our residents. And so we have a strong commitment. We've also joined the city's Clean Energy Act pledge, and so we're looking to see how we reduce our footprint in all of our administrative-owned buildings as well. So for us, is how do we lead by example? If we want to ask our development partners to be sustainable, then we need to show that we're being sustainable as well in our administrative facilities.
The last of, I got 25 more questions, but let me ask this one. Some of the tools we have is Invest Atlanta. We have a new tool, the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation. How do you work with them? How do you leverage their resources? How do you make them partners in your work?
Yeah. So,
and those are really two organizations, maybe two answers.
No, absolutely. But it's two answers, but it's really combined, right? Because if you think back to, and I'm sure Courtney will speak about this, the mayor started an affordable housing strike force. And one of the objectives of the strike force was to take all public land and see how we can expedite the redevelopment of public land, but more importantly, how do we make it smarter and easier to get development to occur? And so when you think about the housing strike force, Atlanta Housing, of course, sits on it along with Invest Atlanta and others. We are literally at the table talking about how do we move projects and how do we move projects faster in order for folks to have a place, an affordable and decent place to stay. I mean, that's our whole business. And so with Invest Atlanta, we have continued to work with them on our co-investment. That's one avenue that we have to invest our dollars in properties that are not directly owned by the Housing Authority. We also, for our Bowen Homes Choice Neighborhood Grant, are working with Invest Atlanta because we recognize housing is one thing, economic stability of that corridor is something totally different. And so in order to be able to have the genesis of economic stability we have to have our economic development agency. And then Invest Atlanta is just a strong partner, period. Many of our down payment assistance programs, we have probably one of the most robust home buyer assistance, down payment assistance programs in the city. Many of our participants, our residents, are able to couple our dollars along with Invest Atlanta dollars. Prior to taking my role as CEO, I took 2 weeks off just to kind of, breathe and say, okay, let me get myself mentally prepared for the shift that I would take. Because many of you may know throughout my career, I've always executed. I've executed. And it's been a combination of execution and vision. And in this role, I'm literally the brand ambassador for the blueprint and the vision for the agency and how the agency will grow, how we will act, how we will partner, how we will collaborate, and quite honestly, how we will show up as a different real estate actor. And so I really needed that time to shift. Well, Invest Atlanta didn't let me shift long because I was literally in an airport and received a phone call from the chief operating officer of Invest Atlanta and said, Terry, one of your projects is in jeopardy. We need to talk through how we work through this project. And so it's that type of partnership, it's that type of collaboration that is important as to how we lift up housing development and housing preservation activities in this city differently. Now, with the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation, I'm proud to say they are a subsidiary of Atlanta Housing. So we actually created the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation to have an entity that will be solely focused on moving public land and moving it fast. In addition to some of the offerings they have right now, they have Midtown, the Midtown Fire Station out in the street. We are literally entering into an IGA for them to do self-development on our parcels. We have a parcel over Thomasville Heights, which is about 26 acres of land, as well as the second phase of Inglewood that we will be transferring over to the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation in order for them to be able to see how we can mobilize that development activity while we're focused in on the acreage that we're focused in. And so it's really, Atlanta truly is a group project. One of the things I remember coming to the city 20 years ago, I remember Clara Axum and Hattie Dorsey telling me that if you want to get something done in Atlanta, you have to have the relationship and you have to have the partnership. I think that is evident of what we're seeing now. And under the mantra that the mayor set forth as Atlanta being a group project, everybody has its part, everybody has its responsibility, but everybody is accountable to making sure we lift up affordable housing differently.
We didn't plan this, Terry, but why don't we stand up and take some questions from the audience? She says she goes to NPU meetings, so you guys can't be too hard on her. We've got about 7 minutes, and we're going to get as many questions. I don't need a long statement to state your question. Just give us your question, and she'll answer it. Bruce?
Congratulations, Terry.
Thank you, Bruce.
I know you were affirmed this was a nationwide search, and it's terrific news for the city. And I remember it's night and day. And so I know you're excited. My question is a strategic question, even philosophical. We all wrestle in affordable housing with how do we ensure long-term economic stability and also serve those with the greatest need, the lower AMI. And how does the Housing Authority sort that out with both in your own properties and then with your partnerships?
No, absolutely. So the majority of the parcels that so we have about 118 properties that we've done some level of infusion of rental assistance on. And the vast majority of those are properties that we actually have the ground lease to. And so that's one way to infuse affordability, to make sure that as we incentivize property that we actually hold the ground lease. A second way is adopting a model similar to the community land trust model. And how can we truly, especially on home ownership, make sure that we're putting in place some level of long-term affordability so that we don't lose the opportunity for affordability after the reset, after the affordability, the typical affordability period would end. And so for us, we are being more intentional about thinking about that. We are encouraging our partners to bring in different ways to look at it. We're actually looking at a project along Jonesboro Road, where we're working with a for-profit developer to purchase land that we own, and we're putting an affordability requirement on that land. That for-profit developer has brought forth a collaboration of nonprofit organizations, including the Land Trust, to make sure that, again, we preserve the opportunity for affordability long-term.
Now, I'm going to have to get Terry to give short answers, too. So,
Yeah.
Other questions?
I don't know if I'm
One-
be able to do that one.
One in the back.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Who do we have?
I think this gentleman.
Hey, Will.
Hey, Terry. Talking about, Bill brought up policy. Are you working with the city as they start working on their rewrite? They just did their Affordable Housing Week. Can you speak to kind of the partnership with the city about helping developers have that streamlined access to affordability through policy?
Yeah, so we're definitely working with the city. Again, Atlanta's a group project, so all the agencies are working together. We were a participant in Affordable Housing Week, but we're also working with the city to streamline an application. So where there's one intake application for any of our funding streams. The good thing about it, and I know this coming from City Hall, the city should be the leader in that effort. And as the leader at Atlanta Housing, we're working along in conjunction with that.
Other questions? One in the back.
Was that short?
Yes, good.
Good morning. Let me echo Bruce's congratulations. It's a long time coming for you being top dog.
Thank you, Kate.
Just have a question about rental housing and housing choice vouchers. There used to be a rental rehab program a long time ago to help landlords keep their properties up. Just with all of the questions about rental housing preservation and subsidizing some of these, I heard on the radio, squalid conditions, just wondering if Atlanta Housing has any resources or given any thought to any resources it could make available to upgrade some of these properties and improve living conditions.
Yes, ma'am. So twofold. One, the Housing Opportunity Bond has a category for small multifamily rehab, so property owners could apply through the Housing Opportunity Bond that's actually led by Invest Atlanta. But with Atlanta Housing, our co-investment fund could be utilized for that purpose. Now, it's not a grant. It is a loan, but the loan is suitable or feasible, financially feasible for the operating conditions of the property.
Right back here.
Hi there. Congratulations. We're so happy you're at the helm. Thanks for all
Thank
your
you.
hard work. Question about mixed income. Does that fit into our models anymore? And does the Public Housing Authority have any mechanism so you can allow mixed income? I get told from developers, I cannot do mixed income. I can only do LIHTC because of the way the rules are, and I can't actually have mixed income. Does it matter anymore
Yeah.
for policy and our long-term effects?
Yeah, so we still strongly encourage mixed income developments. I spoke a little bit about the 5 closings we have this year. I believe we're bringing on about 800 units. Of those 800 units, close to about 60% will be affordable. So we are encouraging mixed income communities. We believe that mixed income communities are healthy communities, and so that is still something we encourage. And throughout our portfolio, when we talk about the 10,000, I know Bill want me to go fast, but I think this is important. When we talk about the 10,000 units that we'll do within the next 5 years, literally, that's the affordable component. The total number of units will be about 17,000. And so that's 17,000 units that will be impacted on the market, either from a creation or a preservation standpoint, with 10,000 being affordable. So we strongly encourage a mixed income model.
All right, I'm going to try to get 2 more questions in. Who was, I don't know, one of you grabbed the mic.
Eric, speaking again, dittos. In working with the communities you all serve, I find that most don't understand who does what, right? And usually blame whoever, if it's on the Beltline, they blame the Beltline for not having affordable housing. If it's anywhere else, they blame you all. And actually, I think most providers don't know the continuum of organizations that help from homelessness all the way through housing. And I was just wondering, in those partnership discussions, if y'all exploring how to let the community know who does what and coordinate that effort.
No, absolutely. And one of the ways of doing that is through House ATL. House ATL was started probably about 2017, and I have the privilege of serving as the co-chair this year. And one of the things that we want to take on is truly being able to say, this is the continuum of housing providers, housing agencies, and this is who you should go for what. But now that does not, even when we do that, right, when we make it clear who's responsible for what, who has what resources, what tools, people will still complain and point fingers. And I think that's okay. I think that's okay. What's not okay is for us not to take action and to make sure that we're working very proactively to provide affordable housing resources and knowledge and education.
Jim?
People have rightly said how fortunate we are for you to be in this position. I also want to say you've got a tremendous board with which to work, and it takes both to happen. So I just wanted to mention that. Partnership, to what extent does Atlanta Housing get with MARTA, on whose board I serve? Because you said it earlier about, it's corridors, not just development, and transportation is so important. So I'm wondering, do you meet with colleague Greenwood or others at MARTA regularly to talk about how we're doing things so that it happens together?
Yeah. So as of yet, we're not having those regular executive leadership meetings. We will. Perfect. Thank you, Jim. I was hoping you would say that. I will say that we have, from an ad hoc perspective, worked very closely with, I believe, Jake, on some of the affordable housing developments that we're bringing on, especially the ones that are along transportation corridors. The other good thing about it is that MARTA is a part of the housing strike force. And so as we're talking about redevelopment activity and how we're transforming neighborhoods, those conversations are being had in that larger table. And let's not lose sight of why that's important. This is literally one of the first times where all the agencies that have some level of influence on some level of residential development in the city are at the table talking about their plans and openly and transparently sharing those plans. And that's important because it helps us understand who has what, but also what resources may be available or may not be available, so that we're not competing, but we're actually complementing each other's efforts.
Here's what I'm hearing from Terry. She's committed to transparency and measuring progress. The transparency is to be accountable to you and the community. That she has a plan that she's following, and the plan is ambitious, is specific, and they will be accountable to us to carry out that plan. That innovation is the center of the work, and that we have alignment, really maybe for the first time, of the public and private sector. We have a mayor that's committed to this, and we have a new leader who spent 20 years getting prepared for this moment. We gave her 2 weeks off. She's ready to go to work. Please thank her for her. Good.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to transition into listening to Elizabeth Apley. Elizabeth often comes to us in person, but it's a busy time at the Capitol right now. So we have taken a moment, actually yesterday, to do a short video to give us an update. Again, and somebody said it in their question, having good policy and having support by our policymakers is the key to getting things done. So let's run the video, George.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate your introduction, and I appreciate the opportunity to appear with you this morning. I regret that I can't be there live and in person. It's so much fun to connect with all of you, but business at the Capitol requires that I be there. So it's my pleasure to provide a legislative update. Here we are on day 30 of the 40-day legislative session. Our message in advocating for housing is that all Georgians thrive when everyone has a safe, decent, affordable, and stable place to call home. And in fact, it's been the law in Georgia for over 30 years that it's the state's policy to provide decent, safe, and affordable housing to all segments of the population. And so our job is to hold them accountable to that policy. So this is a key election year, and in fact, this week, legislators from across the state are qualifying to run for re-election, or new candidates are running to fill seats in the Georgia House and Senate. So in addition to the presidential election, all the members of the U.S. House of Representatives are running for re-election this year. I'm going to share with you where we stand on some of our key housing policy priorities as we enter these final 10 legislative days leading up to Sine Die, the end of the session on March 28th. A reminder that Housing Day at the Capitol is March 13th, and while the program is oversubscribed, we welcome you to join us at the Capitol on the morning of March 13th to lobby for key housing and homelessness priorities. And I'll be sharing with you in this presentation how you can engage at this time to promote the policies on housing and homelessness that are most important. So House Bill 404, the Safe at Home Act, is important tenant protection legislation that would help to bring Georgia closer in line with longstanding norms and laws in all other states. House Bill 404 passed the House unanimously last year, and in that form, it requires that all residential rental housing be fit for human habitation. That's fit for human beings to live in. It caps security deposits, refundable security deposit at 2 months' rent, and it requires that landlords provide a written notice and a 3-business-day right to cure where a tenant is in arrears on the payment of rent. This is very important to give people a final chance to pay the rent that's due before an eviction is filed. Once that eviction is filed, it becomes a part of that record that future landlords will be reviewing and deciding whether to accept these tenants into their properties. And this is a huge barrier, even though the vast majority of eviction filings don't result in a set out or a final writ. The other thing that happens once the landlord files for the eviction is that it triggers hundreds of dollars in fees that are very costly for tenants. Fees for administrative fees and processing fees and legal fees are a tremendous burden, and for some tenants, that burden is recurring. So as the Senate nearly picked the bill up at the end of the session last year, but that we failed by a few minutes. The bill was recommitted to the Senate Judiciary Committee, which passed it out again last month, with only the minor change that the date that the law becomes effective was shifted from July 1, 2023 to July 1, 2024. So we're working hard to pass House Bill 404 this year. The bill is in the Rules Committee, and it will be coming, we hope, in the next week or two to the Senate floor for a vote. We have worked very hard to try to amend the bill to strengthen it in significant ways. We were not successful in generating enough support among legislators to make that happen. And so our current posture is to seek to pass the bill in its current form without any amendments that would weaken it, and to accept it in its current form as an important step forward in tenant protections, although not everything we would like to see. The reason why this bill is so important is that it is an important step forward in helping to keep people safely, stably, and affordably housed. We have some of the highest eviction rates and the highest eviction filing rates of any state in the country, and that's been true for decades. Evictions have certainly returned to pre-pandemic levels, and Georgia is an outlier in failing to provide even basic tenant protections, making it very easy to evict people, leading to what we've seen as significant increase in homelessness in the past year, an increase in homelessness among school children, among seniors, and a significant increase in unsheltered homelessness. Rents are skyrocketing. We have a massive shortfall of affordable and available homes for low-income and extremely low-income families, and fewer homes than even in our neighboring states here in the Southeast. And we know that the consequence of eviction is very damaging to the physical and mental health of children and adults. It permanently harms pregnancy outcomes. Even the threat of eviction has that adverse impact. It undermines children's ability to succeed in school, and it undermines parents' ability to hold a job and for families to flourish. In fact, the population cohort most at risk of eviction are children under the age of 5. And for Black renters, the risk of eviction when controlling for other factors is double, triple, and even quadruple as high. And finally, the risk of eviction increases by double when the family is Black. So we have a very disparate impact of these policies, and we are seeking to make change to improve outcomes for families. We're also advocating to increase funding for affordable housing. The State Housing Trust Fund for the Homeless received recommended increase of $2.9 million in the FY 2024 amended budget that the governor signed last week. This is to fund a match to the Balance of State Continuum of Care for a HUD grant for homeless youth demonstration projects, and we supported that. The Department of Community Affairs, with the governor's support, is also seeking a $4.6 million increase in the FY 25 budget that they anticipate needing for additional HUD grants for housing coming next year. We're also advocating for on a bigger scale for an increase to the Housing Trust Fund for the Homeless. We have a $10.7 billion unobligated budget surplus as a result of 3 consecutive years of historic funding surpluses. And so we're asking for $100 million or more to go to that Housing Trust Fund for the Homeless, which has the legal authority to hold those funds without lapsing, and also to use those monies for the construction and preservation of affordable housing for low-income households, and to use those funds to support home ownership with mortgage assistance or down payment assistance. Finally, we are advocating for an increase of $10 million to the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities for their adult mental health program for the Georgia Housing Voucher Program. You may recall that this program was created to meet the state's obligation under the Olmstead Settlement Agreement to provide supportive housing for homeless people with severe and persistent mental illness who are cycling through the criminal justice system, through the jails and the hospitals and the ERs. The state has an obligation to serve a target population of 9,000 people. They're currently serving 2,550. There's been enormous growth in the program, along with tremendous increase in the cost of funding the program due to increases in rent. And so we need this $10 million to meet our legal obligation under the settlement agreement. And we argue to legislators that, in fact, we are housing this population, but in the most expensive, least effective way possible, by housing them in jails, in prisons, in hospitals, and in emergency rooms that do them no good and provide no help to restore them to their communities. We're also working hard to protect the state low-income housing tax credit. This is virtually the only money that the state invests in the creation and preservation of affordable housing. The reality is that we have been and continue to be in a housing crisis. As I said, homelessness increased 15% last year. Rent and housing prices are soaring, and this is a time when Georgia should increase, not decrease, its investment in affordable housing. You may recall that in October, the Department of Community Affairs opened up the waiting list for the federal Housing Choice Voucher Program. This is what we used to call Section 8 housing. They hadn't opened it up since 2021. They were proposing to fill a waiting list for 5,000 vouchers. In 3 days, time, they received 177,443 applications for those 5,000 waivers. So we urge the state not to go forward with House Bill 1182, which would reduce the state low-income housing tax credit. That program is a model program well regarded across the country. It now provides 100% match to the federal low-income housing tax credit program. House Bill 1182 would reduce it to an 80% match, with some exceptions that would be restored to 100%. So those exceptions, as it passed the House, would be for projects that have a majority of seniors or that provide a preference for veterans or first responders, projects in rural areas of the state, projects near stable and high-frequency transportation, projects for preservation as opposed to construction, and projects operated by housing authorities. This is a program that is supported and administered by the Department of Community Affairs. The research shows that for every dollar invested in the state low-income housing tax credit, Georgia generates $5.79 of economic activity. The loss of this funding would mean a reduction in the production of affordable units in Georgia. We cannot afford to go backwards. So please join me at the Capitol, join me in advocating on these key issues with the people who represent you. Call or email your senator and urge them to vote yes on House Bill 404, the Safe at Home Act. Please reach out to your senator and your representative and urge them to vote no on House Bill 1182 that proposes to cut the state low-income housing tax credit. And finally, call your senator and representative, urge them to increase funding to the Georgia Housing Voucher Program for homeless people with mental illness by $10 million in the FY 2025 budget. Join us at the Capitol for Housing Day on the morning of March 13th. And please remember to engage in the election process. Help others to join with you. Register to vote, educate others on the issues, educate the candidates on the priorities for housing and homelessness in Georgia. Help get out the vote. This is a critical, teachable moment with the people who will be representing you at the Capitol next year. You don't need to have deep pockets to make a difference. Put up a yard sign, meet with the candidates, and explain how housing needs can be met in this state. And remember to be sure that everyone you know votes. Please reach out to me with your questions, your comments by email or by phone. And thank you again for raising your voice on these critically important issues as we move through the final days of the 2024 Georgia General Assembly. Thank you so much.
Give Elizabeth a hand. Elizabeth obviously is not taking questions this morning. But she has urged you to vote yes on House Bill 404 and no on House Bill 1182. You're really making a difference this year, and we can see it, and we're feeling optimistic about some of the policies that we're putting forth. Let me say that everything you saw today you can find at our website, AtlantaRegionalHousingForum.com. So go there, use this resource, make your calls, show up at the Capitol on March the 13th. .org. Sorry. All right, so we're going to transition into what I think is a very exciting project, one we hadn't focused on here in a while, for serving those most in need. It's called the Melody Project. So let me invite the panel up to help us lead this conversation. While the panelists are coming to the table, let me take a moment to acknowledge Andrea Reese, who I think is here, Andrea, and Star C. They had actually planned a similar forum. We said, why don't we combine forces? And they graciously canceled theirs, but brought the panel to the table so that we could have a bigger audience. So, Andrea, thank you for your leadership, and thanks that we could come together on this. I've got some other panelists, I hope. Not a good time to leave the room, Shatiga, come on. Making me nervous up here. Okay. Oh, thank you so much. As you know, we don't do long introductions here. Most of us know each other, and I'll let them introduce themselves. But we have Darren Dunn of Atlantica Properties. Darren has been on a panel here before. Darren, thanks for being here. We have Shatika Ellison from the city of Atlanta. Darren described on a call the other day that she was the boss. So we're going to ask her as the boss how we got this thing rolling. And of course, we have Catherine Vessel from Partners for Home. And I've asked them during their time to introduce others who are involved. I couldn't have a panel of 10 people up here, but they're going to introduce some other folks that are very much involved in this. Well, why don't we just get started? Shatika, I'm going to start with you. This project, while we've talked about this idea for a long time, this seemed to happen pretty quickly for us. And, part of what I wanted for them, I've got some questions, but I really want them to tell the story. And as we learn how they did it, how we can do it again. So, Shatika, can we give us a summary of what the Melody Project is and where the vision for this project came from?
Yeah, no, of course. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shatika Ellison. I am the Director of Special Projects or Housing in the Mayor's Office. I was not the boss, but thank you, Darren. So I would say that this vision comes out of, many of you probably know that the mayor made a pledge to create or preserve 20,000 units of affordable housing. And in that, we are considering all income levels, which would include the unhoused community. It is the City of Atlanta's moral imperative to address the homelessness issue here in Atlanta. I'll let Catherine give all the stats, but I do know that there are over 2,700 people who are experiencing homelessness here in Atlanta. And so when we got the opportunity, actually GEMA reached out to us to donate some containers that were previously used as hospital rooms during COVID. We saw this window of opportunity to use essentially prefab or modular units to create some quick delivery housing. So in August of 2023, Mayor Dickens issued an executive order of $4 million, a donation of $4 million to Partners for Home to facilitate this mission. And therein kind of built this dream team of Darian and all the other partners we've had on this project to push forward this project in 4 months. It was not easy. Darian and I were in research phase for a very long time, learning about this. I think one added benefit for us is that we didn't have to go and figure out what type of product. We knew container, so everything that we researched was container, and figuring out how we could apply it best to the city of Atlanta. We will often say that we were building the plane as we were flying it, and that cannot be furthest from the truth. We definitely have a lot of things that we've learned throughout this process, but it definitely, being able to partner with other public agencies and Catherine and her amazing team, we got it done. So essentially the vision is to not leave out the unhoused community and figure out a way to provide quick delivery housing for them as well, which out of that was born the Rapid Housing Initiative that I currently lead for the city of Atlanta.
And what other public agencies were we relying on working with?
Yeah, we have worked with, of course, Catherine and her team at Partners for Home. We had, conversations with Atlanta Housing to kind of learn how we can potentially provide additional permanent supportive housing on the units that we want to provide. And then just honestly, conversations with all of the public agencies to kind of learn from them what their processes are and kind of get feedback from them. So Mayor Dickens always says that Atlanta is a group project, and that couldn't be more true for this project.
And what role did the council play, the city council? Did they?
Getting the legislation through when we needed it. Again, this is the Rapid Housing Initiative, so a lot of things we had to push very fast. One thing I forgot to mention is that as part of the Rapid Housing Initiative, the way we were able to make it rapid is that the city leveraged its own land, which would make us exempt from zoning changes. So that in of it added to the quick process. And then also, we had a meeting with all commissioners and department heads to say, hey, this is what this project is, we need all hands on deck. And they answered the call, or they answered Mayor Dickens' call. Anytime we would make a call, they knew exactly what this project was, they knew what our goal was, and they knew what our timeline was. And we pushed through, we forged through, and got it done in 4 months.
Excellent. I'll come back to you in a minute, but Darren, okay. What was your role? And maybe just say a little bit about Atlantica, your company, and why it's involved in.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Bill, for having me again at this forum. I always love this gathering. My name is Darian Dunn, the managing partner of Atlantica Properties. I am the developer for the Rapid Housing Initiative. I work for these ladies here. I'm contracted by Partners for Home. Partners for Home issued an RFP for development service for this Rapid Housing Initiative. So that's how I got involved in this project. It was in essence, a national call to action of saying we need to get a developer that will be the fee developer for this entire initiative that will ultimately build 500 units of housing for the homeless community. We were lucky enough to be able to win that competitive bid for these services. And I can honestly say this is the best client. Partners for Home is quite honestly the best client, and with City of Atlanta backing them. So this is a dream for me because we've been able to learn a lot. Most of my work is in the private development area where I have to abide by all the rules of development and housing production.
You're working with the people making the rules.
It is amazing when you have the power of the mayor's office and the power of making a phone call and things that as a private developer I would have to, overcome that hurdle. We just blew right past. So the city saw that as an opportunity of saying how we can have this as a beta test for how housing needs to happen. So this rapid housing initiative has really laid the groundwork of how housing in general, not just homeless housing, needs to be done. So I'm very, very lucky to be able to be a part of this. It's a mission of Atlantica Properties for attainable housing, affordable housing, and lucky enough to be able to work in the homeless housing space, because as a for-profit developer, there's very few opportunities to be able to naturally do that type of work because of the income challenges of the residents. So this is a dream for me, and looking forward to really developing a pipeline of these units.
I think the folks here would like to understand better. So they show you a piece of land, we've got some containers, you're the developer. What do you do?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of development, is that you have to figure it out. Not too many developers in this city have worked with a container project. This was the first multifamily shipping container project in the city of Atlanta's history. This is a true multifamily development, so it's an apartment complex. I wouldn't let the container element of it fool you. This is an apartment complex, a 40-unit apartment complex that was developed to the International Building Code. So this is not shelter, this is not transitional housing, this is an apartment complex. So we had to actually follow all the rules of this. This is a new product type because it's using containers, and we didn't really have any models to go off of. So did a lot of research at the initial phases, but actually hiring a great team of folks that can help us figure these issues out. I hired the Beck Group as my design builder. That was probably the best decision I made on this project, because I knew I couldn't go through the standard design bid build process, which is how most development is done. You get an architect, you bid those architectural plans out to the construction community, and that's how you get it built. When we knew we had a mandate to build these in 3 to 4 months, I knew I had to have a design team and a contractor that were under the same roof. So I hired the Beck Group, which is really one of the only groups in the metro Atlanta area that truly has design build capacity. So that was probably the best decision. They had never worked really with containers before, like no group has, from a developer standpoint or a contractor standpoint. But when you're working with great, smart folks, you figure it out. So we were doing it off the fly. And figured it out, but having a great team to support us, from the architects, the designers, the engineers, and the contractors, we basically did not run into any major challenges that we couldn't overcome just by having great subject matter experts.
So did you go to other cities to see how they did it, or did you guys stand there on that piece of ground and say, let's envision this thing?
Yeah, we researched a few sites. So California, fortunately or unfortunately, has a lot of examples of homeless housing, just because of 1/3 of the homeless in this country live in California. So did a lot of trips in early August, right after I got the contract, to California to visit a lot of their sites. There is one site that they do have that is container housing. I actually just saw that a couple of weeks ago, so I didn't even have a chance to view it prior to this project, but we knew that existed. But we also looked at other models. So containers, when we initially got this project, we didn't have the containers in hand. So we actually were considering many product types. So we were actually going to see how other jurisdictions, how other states do it. And then when we were told we must use containers, that was just thrust upon us. But we were actually researching all different product types, including shelters that weren't permanent housing. And we end up landing on the containers and just had to go off of our instinct and just go off of our feel of this site of how to produce it. But we are now back in that mode now that the Melody's open. I'm back on the road show. Went to California a couple weeks ago. Going to be going to California next week. Viewing and just seeing the landscape that's out there, because we have a lot to learn in the Southeast. We don't really have a homeless issue like they have out there. One person on the streets are too many, but when you really see the magnitude of how it is in San Francisco and Los Angeles, it's awe. It's just puts you in awe. So we need to really get ahead of that curve. So we're trying to learn of what they're doing, so we don't repeat some of the same mistakes, and we can benefit from some of their things they did correctly.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to you as we look to the future. This guy's traveling all over the country. He may need somebody to carry his bags or make reservations for him. Let him know. Catherine, welcome back. We always appreciate your work coordinating. There's so much in the news today about the homeless. You know, we're clearing a lot of the homeless communities out, which puts real pressure. Where are people going to go? What has been the role of Partners for Home?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. So as Chautauqua said, really backing up about a year ago, last January, we met with the mayor, and we're continuing to talk about where we need to invest in issues related to homelessness and how to scale housing solutions for people who are homeless. And we were talking, of course, about our flagship initiative, which is the existing supportive housing pipeline. And we actually have a slide on that that kind of shows the investments that we're currently making. We have 610 units in the pipeline, and we've talked about this at a prior forum before, so I won't go into a ton of detail, but as Josh says a lot, you can see on this slide that most of these boxes are the salmon color, the pink color, which means they're not yet online. And in the meantime, we have people who are homeless now, and homelessness is a crisis. And so the mayor really charged us with saying, what can we do to expedite on, the onboarding of housing as fast as humanly possible? And that really led to the development of the Rapid Housing Initiative. We said, let's use publicly owned land, let's use alternative housing products if that's going to be cheaper and faster, although we've been, as my colleagues have shared, rather agnostic on the type of product that we would be using by site. And so the role that Partners for Home played as the lead agency for the Atlanta Homeless Continuum of Care was really, as a private nonprofit, we can kind of help accelerate some of that work, whereas the city's hands get tied in certain instances. So like Chautauqua said, they were able to issue an executive order to give us the funds so that we could deploy them very quickly. That positioned us, like Darian said, to issue an RFP, to do that very quickly, to get a developer under contract quickly, to be able to issue contracts in a very expedient fashion, to be able to get money out the door as quickly as possible, although the most recent payment was a little painstaking. And then in addition to that, we bring the subject matter expertise. So in the conversations about what is the actual need in terms of what type of housing this should be it be permanent? Should it be temporary? How will we actually pay for that, not just for the capital to develop it, but in our world, the ongoing sticking point, pain point is, how do we get the funds to operate it long term? How do we provide the funding for the supportive services long term? So we bring that expertise to the table. Things that we advocate for, always things like bathrooms that are private bathrooms, private kitchens. Those are things that we were really encouraging for at the very beginning. We know that people who are experiencing homelessness want their own. They want private space where they can close the door, lock it, keep their stuff safe, have a bathroom that they don't have to share with complete strangers, be able to cook a meal in the privacy of their own home. They want all the things that you and I want when we go to the safety and security of our home. So I like to think that is part of the work that we bring to the table as a part of this initiative, and really kind of helping to inform the work from that lens.
And could you speak about some of the partners you're working with to provide services?
Sure.
Because that's the real key. You can move a person in, but they need support.
Yes.
Who are you working with?
Absolutely. So the other part of the work that, that we brought to the table was also procuring an operator and a service provider. So the first best decision that we made was hiring Darian, who really has just been an incredible partner in this work.
Don't let this go to your head, Darren.
I know.
You're getting a lot of credit here.
I will say we actually had an incredible response to that procurement. We had 10 applicants respond. We had national applicants respond. We had incredible collaborative responses, and we were able to land on Darian, which was an incredible decision. That said, we then issued also a procurement for an operator and a service provider, and so we have since hired TI Asset Management, who is an experienced property management team, affordable housing property management team, as many of you all are familiar with, in Atlanta. And they actually provide on-site, full-time property management for the Melody. Then we hired a supportive services provider, and that team is staffed and operated by Hope Atlanta. So we have 4 full-time supportive services staff on site. The service model that we came up with was a little bit more robust than what traditional supportive housing currently provides. We have 2 fully licensed clinical social workers on site, and we have 2 certified peer specialists. So peers are individuals that get state certification by the State Department of Behavioral Health. Those are individuals with lived experience. They have lived experience in mental health or addiction and in homelessness, and they have come into stability in their recovery from mental health and addiction. And those are individuals that can walk the walk and talk the talk with people who are currently maybe experiencing some of those challenges themselves. And then we have the clinical piece there with supervision provided by Dr. V at Hope Atlanta, and I see some members of the Hope team here as well, so that we can really help increase the level of clinical support on the site for people with severe mental illness and addictive disease.
Julio, I think you and some of your team here from Hope Atlanta, just stand up a second so people know who you are. Right.
We have some TIM folks here as well.
TIM? Thank you. Marjorie Stagmeyer. As we look to the future, I mean, I've heard you say we can look to Chautauqua to get executive orders anytime we want them. Or maybe not, but that was an important step. We need the council behind us. We need partnerships. And it really takes a village to do this. As we look to the future, what have we learned? Darren, what have you learned in this process?
I've learned what can be accomplished when everyone is rowing in the same direction. Many projects are held up because of the bureaucratic process we've talked about. They're held up because of the hurdles that developers have to overcome, and all it's doing is creating more and more of the same issue. And this initiative is really showing me if we could operate like this for every project, regardless if it's a nonprofit, if it's a for-profit, if it's publicly led, if it's privately led, this is the way. If all apartments could be built in 6 or 8 months, then that's the solution. Just more production, more housing production. Everyone knows that when you're doing a project from start to finish, if it's multifamily, it's 12 to 18 months. That's just a given. We had to go through all of the construction apparatus that we had to go through. So construction was standard for us, but we did this project in 4 months. What we stripped out was all of the bureaucracy. We did not have to go to any NPU meetings, even though we communicated with them. We did not have to get any approvals on the SAP process from the City of Atlanta, even though we communicated with the city. We did not have to get any approvals from the neighborhood, any of the neighborhoods, even though we had regular meetings with the neighborhoods. So we made sure we were a good neighbor, but all of the standard bureaucracy was stripped out of the way. So we went from a design to a land disturbance permit in 1 week. I don't know if that's ever happened in the history of the City of Atlanta. 1 week.
Any
to
other
get a land
developers
disturbance
out there
permit.
getting it done in a week?
1 week. Right. So that is something that I was sitting at the forefront of this and it blew my mind. But when you have the mayor saying, I want all the directors of every department in the city on this call saying, we're going to get this project done, ready, go. So anytime that my team submitted a permit application, submitted anything, it was at the front of the line. So I know the city is already working on that as a part of Affordable Housing Week, and they kind of preview that is going to be the model for affordable housing. And I hope that eventually it's a model for all housing, because even if it's not affordable, we just need more units. We need bureaucracy to not be a part of this process, and it needs to just be design, construction, and that's it. So I think that's really what I learned of, like, this can happen because we did it.
All right. And I'll just remind us in the last session, that's what Terry Lee committed to, right? That we're going to push through. When I called Josh Humphreys to say, help me put the panel together, he said, what do I know? Call Chatikwa. She knows. What have you learned on this process, Chatikwa?
Yeah, I think I can agree with Darian. We actually just had a debrief meeting with the permitting team where it was kind of a mutual situation where we both learned. We learned on our end how we need to move forward with the rest of this project. Just a quick plug, this is the first 40 of 500, so we have more to go. So we learned how we are supposed to operate going into this, and I think they learned some things, maybe gaps in the process and ways that we could facilitate things better. So I think that was a big piece of what we learned. And then also, as Darian mentioned, there was community engagement. This was specifically for 184 Forsyth, where the Melody currently exists. It was a little different because it wasn't residential. It was mainly parking lots and business owners. But we did meet with them on a bi-weekly basis to let them know about what the project was. We would give them updates of where we were. Obviously, it was fast because it was in 4 months, and because it was so fast, it was a little jarring for the community. But I think we've learned how to work with them and explain to them what, again, the moral imperative is with the work that we're doing. And as we enter other communities for our phase 2, phase 3 of this project, we know how to connect with the community a little bit better. So I think that was very positive. And I also want to take a point of personal privilege to go back to something you asked as far as what council contributed. And I do want to give a shout out to Councilman Dozier, as he was a big help to us having the public meetings for 184 Forsyth and gathering all the people, the right people that we need to talk to, the stakeholders of the community, and just supporting us on this project and even in our next phases. So I really do want to not let this moment go by without giving him a shout out too.
Very good, very important. Catherine, we've talked and dreamed about this for a long time, and I know I see Jack Harden here from the Regional Commission. We talk about wanting to move more quickly, to have collaborative partners, to figure out and be very clear about our roles. What have you learned at Partners?
I can't say much different than what my colleagues have already shared. It was both thrilling and in some ways frustrating, because what we spend the majority of our time doing at Partners for Home is really, I feel like, begging and pleading with all of our partners on a regular basis to do more as it relates to homelessness, to fund more, to subsidize more, to align more resources. I think the general public looks at homelessness and it's easy for them to point a finger and say, you're not doing enough. But when you open up the hood and look under the hood and see just how complex it is to get one person into housing, given the innumerable challenges that individuals experiencing homelessness face, to have to pair the subsidy and the funding for the services, to eliminate roadblocks for people with criminal backgrounds, to convince landlords and property managers to accept somebody with a severe mental illness or with an active addiction. to give somebody another chance when they've already violated their lease 2 or 3 times or haven't paid their rent. And yet we don't want these folks sleeping on our street either. And so much of what we do is this constant drumbeat and really sort of posture of being on our knees all the time, of begging our public and private partners to align and partner with us to create more housing solutions for people who are truly the most vulnerable in our system, is exhausting. And so to be able to create an initiative like this, where literally every single roadblock was eliminated, was an incredible journey. And it's exciting to see that we will do more. But I think the charge for us as a community, as a system, is to see how do we create a system that can scale and sustain at that pace in an ongoing way, because homelessness is a crisis and it's an emergency. I got a text this morning at 7 a.m. from our lobbyist, Stan Jones, who's Elizabeth and Stan are texting me right now at the Capitol. We got half of the funding for the services for the Melody approved in the House side of the budget that was issued this morning. We need the full amount approved by the Senate, and so there is a real live advocacy opportunity that we need to get approved right now so that Hope Atlanta can continue to get paid next year. So that will be our ongoing fight. And one other lesson learned is that we have to get ahead of how we pay for supportive services for people in supportive housing long term. And this is one opportunity for us to all partake in right now when you leave here today, is to call your senator and ask them to approve funding for the Melody in the FY25 budget.
Wonderful, Catherine. I'm going to open it up for questions because I'm sure there's some in the room. Before I do that, and kind of going back to what we had planned over at Star C, I think there's some other people, some of them may be in the room, Elizabeth Banks, Angie Santi, or Ryan Woods. Any of you guys here? And I would open it up for any comments that you have, and then we'll open it up for questions. But I know you guys are all playing a role here. So.
All right. So.
Stand up. Who are you?
Okay. Yeah, that microphone came in hot. So my name is Ryan Woods. I'm with the Beck Group, and we have absolutely loved working with this entire team over the last few months. For me, it's truly a dream project. I think you can start to see all of the various things that went into play. And also, I think, the quote that summed it up best is like, hey, we're building a plane while we're flying it, but everybody has to be on their game. But I think the beauty of this project is you see that when we're able to work together, when we're able to pull all of the various strings that we can control within our own realm, you can see what can be achieved. And you can see that hopefully that this will serve as the blueprint for Atlanta, but other cities across the country. So thank you guys again. And if anybody has any questions specifically about design or construction, feel free to find me.
Here's the man. Anybody else?
Hi, Angie Santi with TI Asset Management, and we are so thrilled to be a part of this really dream team. It's incredible to come on board with everybody that's been so supportive, and I just wanted to mention that out of the 40, we have 38 housed as of right now, and we have 2 more people in the pipeline to move in this week, so we've got 40 people housed in 30 days. Pretty excited about that, so. Thank you to everybody. But it's been wonderful to work with everybody, and we just look forward to more to come.
Thank you.
All right, I'll bring up the rear. So I don't really have much to add that everybody hasn't already added, but what I will say is what really makes the social services, the supportive services unique is what Catherine mentioned, having 2 licensed clinicians on staff, on site every day, as well as individuals with lived experience that can really walk alongside our clients has just been game-changing. And so really making sure that we're able to fund other projects with that exact same amount of support is critical. And so please reach out to your senators and also advocate for that in other housing projects.
Thank you so much. Let me just open it up and see if there's any questions here in the audience.
Hey, Bill.
Where are we? Yes.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
I know Catherine and Darian work most closely with all three of them, but just for Beck, anytime I was on site or anytime I would hear from Darian, he shared with me that they were working for 7 days a week sometimes to get this project through. And he didn't plug it, but this is the same group that did Nobu just months before, and this is a project on such a small scale that they took it, and we're so grateful that you did. His team was amazing. This was Elizabeth on site. She said this is her baby. And that's the type of people that we want to work with when they take ownership in the project and they understand our vision. Mayor Dickens has said a lot lately that this isn't hard work, this is heart work. And hearing that from them was really great and made this project, come from the heart. As far as Hope Atlanta and TI Asset Management, I don't know what they are doing on that property, but they have the people loving them, and we're so grateful for them as well. Just a quick story, when Mayor Dickens when CNN came, I think that was the first time he was able to talk to some of the residents, and one lady shared her story with us that she had been living on the streets for about 1.5 years before she got to the Melody. And for the most part, just kind of giving up on herself because of her mental health issue, family had given up on her, and so many other people had given up on her, that she didn't even want to receive the help that Partners for Home and trying to intervene was originally trying to give her. And I don't know what this team said to her, but she shared with us that they were the first people who seemed like they actually cared about her. And it gave her the motivation to care about herself again. And so I see the residents now coming from a complete parking lot on 184 Forsyth to walking in on the day of grand opening and seeing that this is real, we really did this. And 2 weeks later, as people were just starting to move in, it was reality to see that this is somebody else's home. They have a key, they have dignified housing, and they are accepting the help that we are willing to give. And so it's just inspiring to see the work of, I think everybody is in the Dream Team, and I just wanted to share that piece. We can talk about the housing and support of housing and getting the funding, but I think the biggest piece for me, coming from the city side and being specifically in housing, is seeing the people and how this work impacts them directly. So that's been the best part of this job for me.
Thank you so much. And you can see we're going to have to give her some motivational courses to get excited about this project. I think there's some questions back. Anybody?
Hello there. I am Reverend Olivia Maxwell with On the Rise Community Development Center. I first want to say thank you, because the Melody is an example of how we do holistic work and creating opportunity. I think that we've now worked and found a semi-solution for the visible houseless, but there are so many that are invisible that are houseless as well. And I'd like to know if we're looking to the developer's point at Beck. I know there's a lot of red tape, but that red tape is also to make sure communities of colors are not taken advantage of for their land and area. So how do we create this on a larger scale for the solution nationally for the housing crisis that we have across the country? I'm wondering if we're looking to take this model and maybe work towards making sure that all that are unhoused, all that are seeking affordable housing, that this is also a model. And I'd love to connect with you all to see how we can give financial coaching as part of the work for the wealth generation. Thank you.
Well, let me just say the answer is yes. Okay? And we're a regional housing forum, so at the end of this, I'm going to be challenging the region. But we've asked each of you what you've learned. What we have to learn is to do this all over the region. So yes, absolutely. It can't be just here in Atlanta. I got a question from somebody looking in on YouTube, from Jackie Staten. Are there any initiatives that allow interested parties to learn, volunteer with some organizations doing this work? I guess that's a question of how do people get involved?
Yeah, I think Hope Atlanta has certainly opportunities for volunteering. Maybe they want to speak to that. I see Elizabeth saying yes. There are also opportunities to donate things that the site could use. We do not need hygiene products, but there's other things like cleaning supplies, coffee. I see Elizabeth's going to take the mic as well.
I'll help. The The other thing is once our clients have potentially moved to, maybe they're moved to self-sufficiency and are able to self-sustain on their own and things like that, other clients and residents will move in. So move-in kits, you know, things like sheets and housewares and things like that are always needed. And then in addition, we're working on coming up with volunteerism opportunities to do things like financial literacy, budgeting, digital literacy, workforce development skills, et cetera. So if you're interested in sharing your time, treasure, talent, that's another way you can get involved at the Melody as well. And you can reach out to us via our website, hopeatlanta.org.
So if people wanted to volunteer at Hope Atlanta or any of the supporting organizations, there's a place for them. For those who have developed this and people want to learn about the model or get involved, maybe another developer. Darren, where would you direct them to?
I would say interaction. The development community is kind of a tight-knit group. Learn about this work. My organization, Atlantica Properties, we're in that kind of mission-based space. A lot of developers, the majority of them, are not in the mission-based space, and I think we need a larger army of affordable housing developers and investors, and we need to get them over on this side so we can really, you know, move the needle on this. So I would just say interacting with folks that are more mission-based, that is, I think, how developers and investors can help in this battle.
And I bet if you promise them they can get something done in 30 days, you'll have a lot of developers line up too, Darren. All right, other questions?
Oh, he just answered his question.
All right, here's one up here. Right back here?
Oh, back.
No, right here in front of me. Yes.
Good morning. I'm Savaz. I'm here on behalf of East Point City Council. And my question is, well, it's kind of two-part. Will there be a set terms and conditions to this housing? And will there be a time frame? Example, required job placement or rehabilitation completion? And will you all assist with the execution of these tasks?
Thank you for the question. The housing is using a Housing First platform, which means there are no requirements upon entry for sobriety or mental health treatment compliance. All the individuals being referred to these units are defined as chronically homeless, which means they have a long-term disabling condition and a long length of stay in homelessness. So all of that said, no, those requirements are not in place, but the point of supportive services is to help individuals achieve their identified goals, dreams, and preferences. So if somebody wants to get a job, then Hope Atlanta staff is going to support that individual in getting to work. And we actually had a meeting a couple weeks ago with the Atlanta Workforce Development Organization as they want to bring employment resources to the table. As far as length of stay, individuals are signing a 12-month lease. If they want to stay and renew that lease after the first 12 months, they can do that. So it does operate as pretty much traditional multifamily housing, in that you're going to sign a standard 12-month lease, and as long as you abide by that's the standard terms of a lease, then you can continue to reside there.
Public thanks to you, Catherine, for everything you do. You mentioned this is, I'm Jim Durrett with Buckhead Coalition. You mentioned that this is the first 40 units of a promise of 500, and you put a map up there that shows 600 in the pipeline. What's the relationship of the 500 to the 600? And then a second, if you don't mind, the opening or the conversion of the Atlanta Medical Center campus as temporary housing to provide a place for the unsheltered, coinciding with the city's attention, along with Georgia DOT, on encampments. Can you help us understand how that fits into this ecosystem?
Sure, thanks for that point of clarification. The map that I shared is our current supportive housing pipeline, where we've invested $22 million to develop new units of supportive housing. So what you saw on the screen is 610 units that are either online now or in development of traditional supportive housing, most of which are, they are standard stick-built multifamily development all across the city. The Rapid Housing Initiative that the Melody is a part of is an additional 500 units on top of those 610. So over the next several years, we will have created over 1,100 units in the community for people experiencing homelessness, and Rapid Housing will become a part of that. So the charge of Rapid Housing was that construction is taking too long. We can't wait for these units to come online. We're still investing in them. So that's the distinction. And then as far as the work with Atlanta Medical Center, the mayor has recently charged us with partnering with all of our providers across the continuum of care to identify folks under priority bridges across the city, bridges that might be more susceptible to damage due to fires, given the fire that occurred at Cheshire Bridge a couple months ago now. So to that end, we're working very closely with the city and some of our key partners to, one, stand up a temporary shelter, which has already been stood up and is being operated by our incredible partner, Gateway Center, who answered the call, as they always do, to staff up within 3 to 4 weeks' time and stand up a shelter for about 150 people. That shelter will only operate for about 180 days, so we have a partnership with Wellstar to use that facility on a temporary basis to provide temporary shelter to individuals that are being moved there from priority bridges, while those folks are working with housing navigators and through our partners that are providing housing navigation to get those folks into permanent housing. We estimate about 300 people will be able to be moved into temporary shelter over the course of those 4 to 5 months while they work on placement into housing.
I want to add that, like Catherine mentioned, the map that she showed is supportive housing from Partners for Home, and the 500 of the Rapid Housing Initiative is coming from our partnership with the City of Atlanta. But I do want to say that the rapid nature of this project is that it is our goal and our pledge to get those 500 units by the end of 2025. So it's going to be a lot of fun moving forward.
And a lot of work.
Yes, and
in the back.
Yes, it is. We'll take a minute.
Good morning. I'm Joyce Catchert with Metro Fair Housing Services. I've really enjoyed the presentation. I've been excited about the melody. I have 2 questions, if I may. In addition to the mentally ill, will you also be servicing the developmentally delayed community or population under DBHDD, or will it be limited only to mental illness services?
The population at the Melody is anybody who is chronically homeless. So chronic is a HUD term of art. It means anybody with a long-term disabling condition.
Okay.
So that could be developmental. If somebody meets that criteria, we will likely be trying to get them into other resources because we're always trying to leverage other state-funded resources. We didn't actually mention this, but 32 of the 40 units are ADA compliant, and so we actually have a high volume of people that have accessibility needs. So we have a number of people in wheelchairs and using walkers and things like that, not necessarily developmentally disabled, but yes, in theory, there could be some individuals that meet that criteria.
Thank you, that's good news. On the second question then, do all the other units, in addition to the 32 ADA units, meet the 7 design and construction elements of the Fair Housing Act?
Yes.
Yes?
Short answer, yes.
Short answer is yes. So there's 0 threshold entry, access through the unit, and a 60-degree or 60-inch turnaround in every bathroom?
Yes, so all the ADA units are, and again, this was a fully permitted project by the City of Atlanta, so City of Atlanta inspectors had to make sure this project complied with all ADA building code rules that any other multifamily development would have to comply with.
But also fair housing elements?
And fair housing, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just wanted to make sure that didn't come across in the presentation, but I'd like that you've done it.
We consulted with Atlanta Housing on a lot of these things when it came to ADA, but also just a reminder that the units, well, I believe 12 of the containers originally were COVID hospitals. So COVID hospital rooms, so they were already built to be ADA accessible, and keeping in trend with the units that we were receiving, Darien hired the same constructors of the original containers to create eight additional containers that would look essentially the same and operate the same for ADA. So if you were to see it, all of the bathrooms look how a hospital bathroom would look, and they are able to turn around. Yeah.
For those who have been coming to this forum through the years, you know the answer has not always been yes. So I think this is another area of progress and commitment by the city. Any more? Got one up front and maybe one over here. And Jack, I'll give you a heads up so you can think of the answer. I'm going to call you in a minute just to talk about how this conversation happens at the Regional Commission. Yes.
Thank you so much. I really love this seminar. And I'm Summer Misra, living in Fairburn, Georgia. So got like a couple of questions.
And you are?
Seems like a few parts. Huh?
You are?
You are meaning?
What is your name?
Summer Misra.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. So my first question is regarding affordable housing for like for people that are non-homeless as well as homeless. I'm wondering what other startups besides Airbnb or PadSplit are there, while they still have their good intention and everything, startups that are making, like, have affordable housing for people who are lower income or homeless, who deserve their full privacy as a full right, for people who don't have to deal with a roommate or a housemate, have their own bathroom, common room,
And your
live in
question?
peace. Yeah.
Who else?
Yeah, like who else? And the second question is, I'm wondering what's being done in affordable housing for people who are trying to look for a job, even through networking, and cannot get it, and like something that where they're given a job while provided affordable housing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine, I think you spoke to this a little bit in the past, but anything additional to say? Really about preparing people for jobs, people that we're trying to house. You spoke to it a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, everyone that we place into housing interventions does have supportive services, and through those supportive services, individuals are assisted with getting access to employment. One other housing intervention that we've been investing in that has been very successful has been diversion. Diversion is just a shallow, flexible subsidy that can help exit people out of homelessness quickly into housing. But I will say we rely on resources like PadSplit and others that are incredibly affordable, that give people flexibility to be able to get back into work while we can pay their rent for 2 or 3 months, and it gives them some breathing room to be able to get back on their feet, get back into the workforce with some supportive services so that they can then begin paying the rent on their own. They can save up some money in a place like PadSplit, and then they can go back out into the multifamily rental market.
And I think you would find a lot of information at Partners for Home. I mean, we won't go through the whole list now.
We also, not just to address the homeless community, but we understand that housing is an issue for, again, all income levels. So the City of Atlanta just launched its Housing Help Center, where anyone is able to call and meet with a housing navigator for any of the issues they may have. So if it is they just need help with their rent for the month, we have a person who will step in and kind of serve as a liaison between the tenant and their landlord to come up with a deal, just figure out how much they can pay for them to keep them in their homes to prevent as many evictions as possible. Also, if there's a need for help as far as finding a job or whatever they might need to secure their housing, we have dedicated housing navigators in our Housing Help Center who assist with that, and that was just launched last year in October, and that is a growing entity as well that connects with other partners in the City of Atlanta to address housing issues and serves as kind of like a triage center to connect them to resources.
Let me ask, as other people around the region, they might be partners with Partners for Home, they may be developers. If they called you up, have you got a roadmap? Have you written curriculum, or have you got that far yet? I mean, this has happened in a hurry. But what do we tell people from DeKalb or Gwinnett or Cobb County that says, we're interested in doing that? What are the 5 or 10 steps? How do you do that in 4 months? See, Shatika's moving the mic over to Darren over here.
I think initially it's going to be informal conversations. Right after the ribbon cutting, DeKalb County reached out to us and we met with one of their commissioners last week virtually. And I think it's going to be more of that. It's going to start informally and then it'll grow to a more formal, this is the protocol, this is the framework of how you can do this. I think Atlanta, like in most issues, is going to be the leader. It's the heartbeat of the state, and others are going to follow. And I think that the other jurisdictions are looking for Atlanta to follow, and we're excited to be able to be that beacon for them.
Let me encourage all of you that it move beyond an informal conversation, because I think we have the energy, we've gotten the publicity, we're excited about the project because we see results, and that we really create a more formal roadmap. Question right here.
Yeah, good morning, Joel Dixon. Question as a developer with Urban Oasis, but also as a longtime resident.
Hey,
Really
Joe,
appreciate
you get those 30-day
Oh,
fast
yeah,
parks?
absolutely not.
No,
Like I said,
okay.
not since the Olympics, and I was really young at that time. But really appreciate all of the work that went into it. I know, this has been many, many years in the making. So 2 questions. My first question, as it relates to on the development side for you, Darren, is really, as a developer, a missional developer, what are the key things that you would say, hey, ask your city, right? You got Courtney there, and I'm sure you've told the mayor, but for the rest of the audience to know the key things that you're letting them know to enable both this project and other housing projects. And then the other question is for Catherine and Shatika, and just as a resident of Atlanta, I used to be unhoused, my family was, is what is the neighborhood conversations, and I guess kind of what are you all saying? Because at the end of the day, it's gonna be the neighborhoods that reject this, right? And I know that for a fact. And it's easy to do it down in Garnett where a lot of people aren't yet stabilized, but like you go to the Upper West Side right now, to East Side, it's gonna be tricky. So I just wanna know, what is you all's narrative and talking points as you enter into that?
I would say the narrative of partnership is at the forefront of this, and the city has created this rapid housing initiative with that in mind, where the housing production usually is an adversarial process where a developer says, I want to do this, and then public process says, is this okay? But the concept of you have to get over these hurdles. And I think the concept of partnership on this, one being that it was city land, we didn't have that adversarial, piece. But I think that is what we can take into just private development or nonprofit development, is that let's take this housing from an adversarial, do you meet a criteria, to how can we help you get this done? And I think the City of Atlanta and Atlanta Housing have done a great job in saying we want to create partnership moving forward, because that's the only way we're going to meet this goal. We have a leaking bucket. As we create these 20,000 units, we're losing units as well, and that is usually never talked about when we're talking about creating these 20,000 units, is that the preservation has to happen as well. So we need as many folks pushing in the same direction and saying, how can we help you get this done? So we don't have to tell the city much. They're already saying, we're going to lead this charge, and how can we be a partner with you?
To address your second question about essentially community engagement, I think I shared before that that was a learning process for us, a learning curve in the very beginning. And to your point, at 184 Forsyth, there were just owners of parking lots and just business owners. It wasn't more residential, but we still engaged with them. Because we leveraged city-owned land, we did not have to go to the NPU. We did not have to go to the zoning review board, things of that nature. But we still felt it important to keep that community involved, not only to let them know what was happening in their community, but also to receive feedback. So we met with them on a biweekly basis and are still meeting with them to share with us any concerns they might have of the development while it's there. Of course, we engaged APD to work with our security officers on site. It's 24/7, so that's a part of it too. They wanted to know about security. They wanted to know that it wasn't going to look like Gateway on the outside. They wanted to know that people weren't just going to be lingering. They wanted to know that the people who were there were going to actually be safe because of it being located in a downtown area. And so those are all conversations we had to continuously have with them to kind of provide some comfort. And that is the plan. You haven't written it down yet, but the plan that we're going to take to all the other neighborhoods. I told you all 500 units by the end of 2025. It's March 2024. We have a lot of work to do. We are already starting on our next 3 sites and communicating with those communities as well. I typically take the charge on that and setting up public meetings, setting up if they have any questions, Darian and I, and Catherine, we will hop on a meeting in a second to answer any questions or concerns they might have. But as we understand what the project is going to be and solidify our sites, we are already engaging. That's in the very beginning of our conversation, even though a lot of the rapid piece of not having to go and have these conversations is not mandated for us, we still think it's a very important piece. We don't want to tell them that here is what we're putting in your community. We want some feedback, like, hey, what do you need? What will make you feel comfortable? You know, the mayor always says too that some people, when it comes to NIMBYism, like, you know, not in my backyard, the mayor will share with them, they were already your neighbors before. We're just providing some structure for them. And so just letting the communities know to consider all these things, consider the people and the humanitarian effort that we're making to house this community.
Thank you. Jack, the question is, how do we take this conversation regional? I know you've chaired the regional commission. Does that conversation happen there?
Well, yes, first of all, let me say that all around the region, we have different political and even homeless environments, but we definitely want to learn from this. One of the key lessons here, I think, is the leadership of this mayor who made all of this possible. One of the great assets we have as a community, this mayor is the first Atlanta mayor to become chairman of the Atlanta Regional Commission. And he's already reached out to me about ways in which we can really reinvigorate some of the cross-regional cooperation we had when we had the Tri-J. I would say that we don't have a Home First fund for the region, but we have a number of strategies and a lot of conversations going on, and focusing a little bit more on motel to home, wealth management through some of our savings strategies. But there are a lot of conversations about how do we have the same housing shortages in the region that we have in the city. Or maybe, this is Jack Harden's numbers, not somebody else's, maybe 100,000 units short in the metropolitan area, in the 11 county area that we focus on. So we've got a lot of work to do, and we've got a lot of lessons learned, but we don't have any projects on the table to share with you. Another blessing is we have engaged and committed and understanding leadership in some of our key counties now in a way that we haven't had in 20 or 30 years. And that, together with the City of Atlanta's focus on regional leadership and cooperation, are all positives.
Thank you very much. We've heard that it takes leaders and courageous leaders, not only the mayor, but the city council and all of us. It takes an executive order sometimes to move things along. It takes some money sometimes, that gap funding. But I think maybe most importantly, what we've heard is it takes a village. It takes all of us in our own roles to get something like this done. So Jack said there's a big goal out there, but we're going to do 40 units at a time. And we're going to do 500 units by the end of 2025. So we are making progress, and I hope we take more time to celebrate when we do have victories, instead of just look at the ain't it awful news of we have so far to go. Please thank our leaders here on this panel for their time. Darren, Shatika, Catherine, thank you very much. I want to pivot now to what I think may be an important moment in this housing forum. The mayor has said that he's going to run again if the president doesn't call him away, but he's committed to be here in Atlanta. And what you see is he has to build a team to get things done. And also so important, because the mayor's got 100 things to think about every day, is there's got to be a person on the team who is close, who is trusted, who has a vision, and has a history of commitment to affordable housing. So I want to invite Courtney English up here to share some words. I'm told I don't have to ask him 5 questions. He'll give me his 25 minutes. But Courtney, come on up. And Courtney is the Chief Policy Officer and Senior Advisor to our Mayor, Andre Dickens. He's been a friend to this work for many, many years, and he's someone that I look to, and I think we all look to help the mayor realize his commitment to affordable housing. Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bill, for your continued leadership and advocacy for affordability, really everything. I mean, you're one of Atlanta's giants, and you set the example for the rest of us who aspire to public service. So thank you so much for having me this morning. I wanted to share just a few thoughts about what we have going on in the city of Atlanta, all things housing. If you can't tell, we've been a little busy working and trying to turn as much dirt as possible. This is such a great room. I know we've got a ton of folks online. I know you heard from our outstanding CEO of Atlanta Housing, Terry Lee. Give her another round of applause just because she's awesome. Of course, the mayor has a bold goal of building or preserving 20,000 units of affordable housing over an 8-year period. We're going to get 10,000 of those from Terry Lee. She's got them in her back pocket already, so we appreciate her leadership. We've launched a faith-based housing initiative where we're going to get 2,000 units of affordable housing from our faith-based institutions. We got a lot of faith-based institutions around with a lot of dirt, and we plan on helping them to activate that dirt. Now, if you didn't catch that 2,000 units, that means you didn't spend enough time in Sunday school, because 2,000 out of 20,000 is 10%. That's called a tithe. Come on now, stay with me. Stay with me. Yeah, that's right. But the road so far, how are we gonna get there? The mayor established the Affordable Housing Strike Force, which I have the honor of chairing on his behalf. The Affordable Housing Strike Force is a combination of everybody who owns or controls dirt in the city. It's every single public agency, from the Atlanta Public School System to the state, to MARTA, to Atlanta Housing, of course, Invest Atlanta. I always forget somebody, the Atlanta Land Bank, the Atlanta Land Trust. I think I see Amanda Ryan in the back of the room. Hey, Leadership Atlanta classmate, what's up? It's everybody anywhere who is in the business of either you're a private institution or a quasi-government agency. We're all sitting around the table for the first time ever, coordinating all of our housing efforts. And so we're trying to figure out how to activate the over 2,000 acres of publicly owned land in the city of Atlanta. And so by activating that land, you see exciting projects like the Melody, which you all just heard a lot about, and a number of other projects across the country. Of course, to make all of this work, we need money. We need as much money as we possibly can get. And so the mayor launched another $100 million affordable housing bond. We plan on leveraging those dollars against private dollars. We've partnered with the Community Foundation of Greater Atlanta, who is in the process of raising a $300 million housing fund, of which they have already raised $240 million. That gives us a war chest of $240 million or $340 million that we can deploy today for affordable housing efforts across this city. That's super exciting. Of course, we created what we call the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation. The Atlanta Urban Development Corporation is what it sounds like. It's an innovative body that is a subsidiary of Atlanta Housing that is designed to create what we call social housing. Now, anybody remember the housing projects of old? Right? Anybody? Yeah. And so I grew up across the street from a number of housing projects, Bourne Homes, Bankhead Courts. There are a number of them that have been shuttered throughout the city. But the AUDC is designed to activate public land, acquire additional land options, and create a different type of public housing by which we are not concentrating poverty, but really rebuilding mixed income communities that have deep long-term affordability at speed and at scale. So we're super excited about that effort as well. Of course, you know, as we build and create additional housing, we know that we are also losing housing units. It's incredibly important that we do everything we can to protect and preserve the existing housing units. The cheapest housing is the housing that already exists, the housing that is already in our midst. And so we're working really, really hard to deploy funds for owner-occupied rehab. We're working really, really hard to ensure that everybody in this city has access to safe and secure housing. We've launched a safe and secure housing initiative to go after bad actors. And I don't really know how else to say it, but there are some bad actors in our midst, and we're going to attack them with both carrots and sticks. If you want to do right and you want to get your property back in order, we're here to help you. We will extend our hand. But if you are a bad actor, like the owner of Forest Cove, we're going to have something to say about that as well. To that extent, we've added additional code enforcement officers. When the mayor took office, there were 6 folks in code enforcement. Today, there are 23. There were only 2 lawyers in our city solicitor's office who are going after bad multifamily property owners. Today, there are 7. We've been able to reposition 6 properties. We've moved every single resident out of Forest Cove in Southeast Atlanta, and we will bring every single one of those residents back to their communities. We've launched a class action lawsuit against Millennium. We've worked with HUD to ensure that property owner no longer has the ability to apply for government subsidy because they just can't seem to get their act together. And so if you're a bad actor, we got news for you. We're going to come see about you. And it's really that simple. Of course, you've heard a lot about the Melody. It's a transformational project. We are going to build more. We're coming to a neighborhood near you. Shatiqua said it best. Simply put, these folks are already our neighbors. They're already living in our midst. They're already living in our neighborhood. So we are coming with more melodies. We've recently done a deal with ITC. We're going to transform one of their old dormitories into affordable housing for the homeless. And you'll see us continuing to make strides so that we hit that 500 unit goal by 2025. All of this work together has already borne some pretty exciting results. In a little over 2 years, we've delivered over 4,000 affordable housing units, with another 5,000 housing units on the way. We have a slew of transformational projects in the works that will transform the city for better and forever. Projects like Bowen Homes, Community Choice Neighborhood Project, the Civic Center, 2 Peachtree Street, which will be the largest office to residential conversion in the southeastern United States. We're building housing on top of the Midtown Fire Station. How about that? Y'all been to Midtown Fire Station, little rinky-dink fire station? We're going to transform that fire station, get a brand new fire station for our firefighters, and we're going vertical on top of that. We're super excited about that as well. Of course, all of this is going to coincide with our expansion of our policy toolkit. So you'll see us advance and look towards expanding exciting options like inclusionary zoning, which Terry Lee helped stand up when she was over at the city. You'll see us go, again, I talked about the Safe and Secure Housing Initiative on a large scale, multifamily, but there's some bad actors who own a ton of properties. The other day, the AJC released, or actually published, a Georgia State report that talked about the number of corporate landlords we have in our midst who control a significant portion of our housing stock. This past Monday, yesterday, I don't know what day it is. It's Tuesday, right? Yeah, help me out. Okay, it's Tuesday. We reintroduced a slew of policies that are targeted at going after those corporate landlords who don't want to do right. Now, if you're a corporate landlord and you got your act together and you plan on activating your housing, particularly if that's going to be affordable housing, we want to work with you. However, if you're a bad actor who's sitting on housing and using it to depress our communities and it's turned into blight, we're going to come see about you too. And so we're super excited about that. We're going to continue to remove barriers that stand in the way of housing. We know permitting has been a nightmare in the past. We worked really, really hard to reduce our permitting time. And 2 weeks ago, we had, for the first time ever, Affordable Housing Week. where we brought everybody into City Hall, and you were able to get your permits on the spot-ish, right, in 5-day period. But you know, you got them. You got it. That's super fast in comparison to previous years. So as you can see, we've been really, really busy. The only other thing I want to say is that this mayor's commitment to housing is irrefutable. We are dedicated both now and well into the future. In fact, he and I talk about it. We say affordable housing is our love language. But affordable housing is, in and of itself, is not the goal. The goal is to ensure that every single Atlantan has access to the kind of neighborhoods that allow them to move up the economic ladder, to allow them to have a choice-filled life. And of course, affordable housing is a cornerstone. It's a cornerstone to that, but it's not the only ingredient. And so you're going to see us, as we build more affordable housing, you'll see us work to attract and build grocery stores in neighborhoods. You'll see us work to bring transit options to neighborhoods. You'll see us work to increase access to early childhood education, because all of these ingredients make for a whole, healthy city, and that ultimately is the goal. And so together we're going to work as hard as we know how, as fast as we know how, to ultimately make Atlanta the best place in the country to raise a child. And affordable housing is a key cornerstone to that goal. You can help. If you got a housing deal, we want to know about it and help you get it across the line. If you got land, we want to know about it and help you develop it. If you got ideas, we want to hear about them and deploy them. We are not ashamed of stealing good ideas. We will take it and run clean off with it. It's okay. We'll give you all the credit the first time. The second time, we did it ourselves. and most importantly and lastly, if you got money, we definitely want to know you. So I'll be quiet now. If there are any questions, Bill, I'm happy to answer any questions that folks may have about this or any other topic.
All right, if we start questions, we're going to go late.
Uh-oh.
So we're not going to do questions.
Okay, no questions. I love y'all. Thank you.
All right. Let me say again how much we appreciate the leadership of the mayor and now his commitment to chair ARC. But we also know that you've got to have a Courtney English standing beside you and helping you. You've got to have a Terry Lee heading up Atlanta Housing. You've got to have the folks like we had on the panel to really make progress. So what we've heard today, it takes leadership. And everybody in this room is a leader in your own way. That you've got to build the right team to get things done. And we saw the team that got the Melody done. You're all on the team, and you're part of your own teams. That you've got to have a plan, because without a plan, you don't know if you're making progress. You've got to build coalitions, because without a coalition, you can't do it alone. That we've got to work collaboratively. And we hear that term over and over again, but it really takes the public and the private sector. That we've got to measure outcomes and be accountable to the community. Finally, we've got to celebrate success when we have it. Because if we kind of listen to social media, we can be very cynical. The reason we started the meeting today with a pass the peace and get to know your neighbor is that, as Courtney says, the Melody's coming to your neighborhood. And we know NIMBY exists, not only in Atlanta, but around the region. And the only way we're going to overcome NIMBY is to know our neighbor. So it's up to us to get to know our neighbor and to introduce our friends to their friends. And by doing that, we're going to build the community and the city and the region that we all dream of. Thank you all for your participation today. We look forward to seeing you in June. I want to thank St. Luke's Church for hosting us, for ARC being our host, for George Bergen and ANDP, who puts this whole program together. Give them all a hand, and God bless. Have a good day.